What's up, guys? Toad back again. Yesterday, 1-0. Another under in Toronto, Texas. That one hit. I'm on a nice baseball run. I think I was wrong about it being 8-2. I don't think it's 9-2 right now. I think it is something close to that, but I looked at my MLB bets going back further than that over the last month or so, and I'm 17-7 in my last 24. So I'm on a 17-7 Major League Baseball run. So I'm doing well in the major leagues. I don't have any plays tonight, even though we do have a full Major League Baseball card and 3 college football games tonight, which I'll talk about. I'll give you what my strongest lean is, which is one of the college football sides. I'm teetering on the edge. I'm close to making it a play because I do like it, but we'll see about that. I probably won't wind up doing it. And of course, tonight I will have the college football Saturday show. The week 4 college football breakdown will be tonight. Anyway, yeah, the under yesterday in that Toronto-Texas game hit. Kevin Gausman, the road warrior, had another good road performance, gave up no runs. I think Toronto gave up no runs in the entire game. They won 4-0. The bullpen finished the job. Kumar Rocker didn't do as well for Texas. He just walked too many guys. He was wild, but he still only allowed 1 earned run. I'm pretty sure he didn't go enough innings, really, but Texas's bullpen somehow was able to kind of hold down the fort as far as the under was concerned. I think they only allowed 2 more runs. It wound up being a 4-0 game. Pretty easy win there. And if you went first 5 inning under on that, that one also was a cash. Let's look at the card today. And speaking of Kumar Rocker, it would be more fitting if he was on the Cleveland Indians, right? Let's talk about the Cleveland Indians first here because they're in one of these interleague games here. I'll just go over a few of these baseball games that have more playoff implications. Cleveland, I think they're in kind of a bad spot because they clinched a playoff spot yesterday. I don't know if it was a clinch of the division or if it was just a clinch of a playoff spot because, well, it seems like it would have to be both simultaneously, but maybe not because maybe Baltimore is still atop the wild card standings. I'm not really sure, but Cleveland clinched a playoff spot last night, so they were celebrating, and now they're on the road going out to St. Louis. I think Cleveland's starting a road trip here. They just beat Minnesota, I believe, in that series. Cleveland used a ton of relief pitchers in that game, too. They used so many. I think they used 6 or 7 relief pitchers in that game, and it was a walk-off win at home, too, to take 3 out of 4 from division rival Minnesota. Every win was by 1 run. All these close games. Cleveland, like I said, they win a lot of close games. And look at this usage of the bullpen here for Cleveland. So I would have to fade Cleveland today if I was going to do anything in their game against St. Louis. I don't necessarily want anything to do with St. Louis either, though. But Cleveland, you'd think they got to be in a letdown spot. They clinched a playoff spot, so now you could see them take their foot off the gas a little bit. I think that's what happened with Milwaukee last night. That was something I brought up on the show yesterday. Milwaukee had just clinched their division, and they seemed to not really show up yesterday. They couldn't even hit Brandon Pfaadt, who is terrible against them. I'm pretty sure they only got 1 run or something. So Arizona pretty clearly was the more motivated team there. As far as motivation is concerned here, I don't know, because St. Louis is basically out of it. But Cleveland heads out on the road. St. Louis, I think, is remaining at home, and they just lost a game. They were on the verge of a sweep of Pittsburgh, and they lost a game. I don't know about any of that, but Ben Lively's pitching for Cleveland. His numbers look okay this season, and they are for the most part, but I think they're a little bit misleading. His whip at 1.23 is a little bit higher than I would like, but he hasn't been that good recently. In his last 4 starts, he's gone fewer than 5 innings in 3 of the 4, and the other one only went 5 innings. Hasn't been getting a lot of strikeouts. It's not really exactly his game. He had a 5.4 ERA last month. Hasn't really been keeping runners off the base paths either, allowing too many hits, too many walks last month too. And he's been facing weak offenses this month as well. So I don't know if I trust Ben Lively. And his stats against St. Louis's hitters, they've actually seen him before, and St. Louis actually hits him well in 41 at-bats. He's given up a 366 batting average to them, 5 home runs to them, and it's not just one guy doing the damage either. He's given it up to St. Louis, man, and a 1,190 OPS because of all that. So I think the play in this one, if you were going to play, it would be to fade Cleveland. But then on the other hand, Kyle Gibson is pitching for St. Louis, and he's not really the greatest. 1.33 whip indicates that his ERA should probably be higher at 4.11. He looks like the worst pitcher because Ben Lively has an ERA in the 3s, but Gibson's actually been in the better recent form, really, out of the two. He's been at least notching more strikeouts, even though he's been a little bit out of control as well, a little bit wild as well. But he's had a few games in a row now where he's allowed 1 or 0 earned runs against the Yankees, including against the Yankees in one of those starts, but the others against Seattle and Toronto, I don't know. And then his stats up against Cleveland, I think, are mediocre. I mean, Cleveland does have the offensive capabilities to really get to anybody, and in 90 at-bats, he's given it up to them too. 13-8 strikeout walk ratio, 333 average, and 843 OPS. So Gibson, I would rather have St. Louis have a better pitcher on the mound here to actually play St. Louis. They're up from -110 to -111. Cleveland's 79% of the tickets, 93% of the cash. So they are they're very public, and they have more of the cash than the tickets. I think fade in Cleveland would be a fade of the public, though. The public would only come in on the Cleveland side. So I think probably the value actually, even I wouldn't even say the market is really indicating on Cleveland here. I would still say that market would kind of be indicating that you should fade the public in this one, in my opinion. But I'm not going to do it. What's up, Johnny? You want me to flash? I don't want to do that. I'm better off dead. This isn't Tower Gang, bro. Man. Yeah, Scott, what's up, man? Yeah, I'm a can, man. Sports ball's fake and gay. True. That's why I do it, man, because I'm fake and gay. What else we got going on here? We have a lot of games here that have playoff implications, and I don't know if I'm going to hit every single one of them, but Baltimore, Detroit is obviously one of them. Detroit, they're on the verge, man. They just swept Kansas City, who was atop the wild card race, and now we have this big-time cluster in the AL Central, and only 2 of these 3 teams are going to make the playoffs, I think, along with Baltimore, and it remains to be seen who it's going to be. Kansas City was, I think, maybe leading the wild card race going into that series, and now Detroit's won 5 out of their last 6 games, all against their wild card competition. Or, excuse me, Detroit has done that. Detroit is really playing well right now, but are they going to be in a bit of a letdown after sweeping Kansas City and now going on the road? I would kind of say no, because they're facing Baltimore, and that's obviously another one of their competitors for the wild card race. I think both teams should be focused in this one. Baltimore, they're coming off of almost getting swept by the San Francisco Giants. And that win, by the way, against the Giants eliminated the Giants, technically. I don't think there are really dream crusher scenarios in baseball necessarily, like there are in football, where when that team gets eliminated in like college football, you can really see the dream crusher take effect, where that football team just won't really come motivated in the next game. And in baseball, because it's a prolonged season, you have a bunch of games left, I'm not sure that it really has as much of an effect. So I don't know if we'd expect San Francisco to really be in a huge letdown spot after that. San Francisco's in one of these interleague games. They're playing against Kansas City, though, and Kansas City's going to need the game. But you can see the line dropping on Kansas City from -160 to -156. 92% of the tickets, 98% of the cash. So Kansas City, very public. So it does look like the market indicators are kind of going against Kansas City a bit there. But it's Mason Black pitching for San Francisco there, and he's a young pitcher who has really pretty bad numbers, although his strikeout walk numbers are actually not bad, but his ERA is sky high. So even though Kansas City has never seen him before, I don't know that I would trust Black. Kansas City is going to be the more motivated team, obviously, and Michael Wacha is the more proven pitcher, the staple there, even though I think he's kind of a mediocre pitcher. So that's a tough game to handicap. Bobby, yeah, you think Astros going to win the World Series? Certainly a possibility. They've been probably the best team in baseball since they started 7-19. They've completely turned it around after that and had probably the best record in baseball since then. Oh, thank you. Yes, my cadence is hypnotic. That's right. You guys can't help but listen to me, man. I don't know. Maybe should I bring it down a little bit and just be all smooth and sexy when I talk about this? I don't know. Maybe. Let me get back to these games now, because I only got like 20 or so more minutes here, or maybe 30 at best. All right, what was I talking about? Kansas City, San Francisco. Yeah, I mean, Kansas City, the more motivated team there, with San Francisco being now eliminated, and Kansas City in that wild card fight. But they're facing a pitcher they've never seen before in Mason Black, so that could give him a little bit of an edge there, even though I don't think he's a very good pitcher. We'll see what happens there. Baltimore, Detroit, though, I was talking about. This is a huge huge series with major wild card implications. Detroit has Keter Montero pitching, and he's a guy with terrible stats still, but he's been pitching better recently. So he's not as bad, I don't think, as his stats would suggest. And his ERA does continue to go down, as we've seen 3.82 last month, 2.45 this month. But he's not notching a lot of strikeouts, and he's still walking too many guys. So I don't fully trust Montero. And he does have some history against Baltimore, I believe. Baltimore, 19 at-bats against him, has done okay against him with a 263 average, 668 OPS. So he hasn't really completely dominated Baltimore. Not too many pitchers do. Baltimore has a really good offense, but Detroit's offense has been pretty capable recently as well. But Baltimore does have Corbin Burnes on the mound here, and he's their ace. I mean, there's nothing much more to say about that. His stats on the season are really excellent overall, and he's returned to form after he had a few kind of bad starts in a row and had a pretty bad August, really, with a 7.36 ERA. You can throw that away start against the Dodgers out because the defense really let him down. 5 unearned runs scored in that one, so that start wasn't actually that bad. Then he returned to form, but it was against the White Sox. But hey, if anybody's going to help you return to form, it would be the Chicago White Sox, right? But then he faced Tampa. I mean, those are offenses that you can easily dominate, but I still think that's helping Burnes get back into the rhythm there. Burnes is still a really good pitcher, but he did face Detroit in his most recent outing. So even though he dominated them and went 7 innings, gave up no runs, 7-1 strikeout walk ratio, 2 hits allowed, it doesn't mean Detroit just saw him. So that means Detroit is a little bit more familiar with him because they just saw him. So is that going to give them a little bit more of an edge? I don't know, because Keter Montero also just pitched against Baltimore the last time he pitched, because these teams just had a series prior to the previous series. So both pitchers are recently familiar to the opposing hitters, and I think it might affect Montero more because Burnes is a veteran, man. I mean, most offenses have seen Burnes before, so I don't think you really gain much more familiarity by facing him one more time, whereas Montero, much younger pitcher, he's a guy who's completely unfamiliar to a lot of hitters. So with Baltimore having seen him once, I think that's going to help Baltimore a bit more. And he only struck out one guy in that game, even though he didn't allow any runs. So that lack of strikeouts is kind of a red flag. So I do kind of like the Baltimore side, with Detroit coming off just such a major, major sweep. And Baltimore, I believe, having the starting pitching edge there. They're a huge favorite, though, down from minus 190 to minus 188. 64% of the tickets, 89% of the cash on Baltimore, though. So Baltimore, the market does look like it's indicating on them to me a little bit. I try to read into these market indicators here and say, well, does the money line movement really matter, or does the cash percentage matter more? When it's a situation like this and the cash percentage is that lopsided, I do think that it's kind of an indicator. Then we do have my Boston Red Sox, or everybody's talking about how, oh, the Red Sox are still alive, man, because they're still 3.5 games out of the wild card or whatever, and all they have to do is sweep Minnesota in this series, and then they could do it, man. Just gain 3 games on Minnesota. Yeah, as if it's that easy. I don't like it at all. I mean, the Red Sox are sitting at minus 105. 59% of the cash is on the Red Sox. 57% of the tickets over on the other side. Up, it just flipped a little bit as we see the pregame, man, keeps reloading, keeps you up to date. But still, we see what looks like the public ticket percentage is on Minnesota because they have the better record, but Boston has the cash coming in on them. I'm not sure I agree with that. This is a weird pitching matchup, too, but the Red Sox, scheduling-wise, they're not in a good spot. I mean, they're returning home from a road trip, but it was a short road trip that kept them on the East Coast. It took them to New York and Tampa, so it is not a road trip that took them to very unfamiliar places or that far geographically. So maybe it's not the worst spot to be returning home from that. And they don't have a day off, which, as I mentioned, the day off actually hurts you more when you're returning home than just playing straight through. I still think it's a bad spot for the Red Sox, but not like the worst spot they could be in one of these return home spots. The Red Sox do actually do terribly in these games, though. They have a lot of return home spots on Friday nights, and the Red Sox are actually horrific in those home Friday night games. They lose constantly in these games. I don't know exactly what their record is, but if you look it up, trust me, their record is really bad in that scenario. Their record is bad at home, man. They're below 500 at home. It's ridiculous. The Red Sox have one of the better road records in baseball, but their home record is one of the worst in baseball. It's absolutely crazy. I don't know how that even happens. But This starting pitching matchup is also interesting, I guess. Minnesota has David Festa pitching, and the Red Sox have Richard Fitz, Dick Fitz, on the mound for the Boston Red Sox. This is a matchup between two rookie starting pitchers who have never been seen before by the opposing lineup. So that would make me want to look to maybe play an under, but I just can't do it, man. I don't trust either of these pitchers. I think Fitz is actually probably the more trustworthy of the two, but we only have 2 starts out of him, so we don't really know exactly what we're going to be getting out of this guy, but he has not allowed any runs in his first 2 starts. One was against the White Sox, so who cares? But then he shut out the Yankees for 5 innings, although he walked 3 guys. So Fitz has been pitching pretty well. I mean, that's pretty impressive for a rookie to do that in their second start, but he's walked too many guys. The Red Sox lost that game, but it was not his fault. Festa, on the other hand, has been a little bit worse, but we have more of a sample size to look at. His whip isn't that bad at 1.27, but his ERA has gone up to 5.07. He's been struggling, even though you see he hasn't allowed that many runs, except for those first couple of starts. You see like 4 or fewer, basically. But the problem is he doesn't go deep into like any of these games. So allowing like 4 runs when you only go 4 innings is a little bit worse than what it looks like. If you went 7 innings and gave up 4 runs, that's a lot better. And he's been struggling with the walks in his last few starts. 15-7 strikeout walk ratio this month with a 5.68 ERA. Festa is not in the greatest recent form, but again, as I was saying, Red Sox have never seen him before. So you have 2 starting pitchers who have never been seen before by the opposing lineups. My lean would be to the under in this one more so than the side, but I don't know that I could do it, man. And now we see what looks like the line has actually moved to Minnesota being a favorite again. I don't even know what. I feel like I'm like just going crazy here. Didn't it just say the Red Sox open -105? Which I guess maybe they did if they're tracking a book that has reduced juice on these. Maybe both sides open at -105, so both are accurate. Now we see Minnesota is at -106. I don't know what's going on here, but look at the total. It is moving towards the under. 9 down to 9, juice to the under. 77% of the tickets on the under. 98% of the cash on the under, though. So there is something to that unfamiliarity aspect where these hitters have to take time to adjust to these rookie pitchers that they've never seen before. But to counter that a little bit, it's Fenway Park, which is a hitter-friendly ballpark. And like I said, both of these pitchers have been walking too many guys. Scott, yeah, I do hockey as well, yeah. I've gotten into it. I didn't start out doing hockey. It took me a while to start doing it, but a lot of the same stuff applies. So, yeah, hockey was decent for me this most recent season, so I will be getting back into it. Yes, I am the Hypno-Toad. I apologize for getting you high, Bobby. Have a good day as well, Bobby. Thanks for dropping in. My football analysis is going to be more interesting. I think I always get more hyped about football than baseball, man, even though baseball is the stretch run here, and some of these games are big. Are there any other big games here that I really want to talk about? I don't know, not really, except, well, I will mention the Dodgers quickly. Well, actually, Arizona-Milwaukee, I mean, that's kind of a big game because Arizona, just similarly to yesterday, they're battling for the wild card, whereas Milwaukee doesn't really have that much left to play for, right? Because Milwaukee has already clinched their division now. Arizona's a road favorite here, which is kind of telling you something that Zach Gallen is a much better pitcher. In his career, I know he's held Milwaukee's hitters to a below 200 batting average. So Zach Gallen is the better pitcher and has the better numbers against Milwaukee than Colin Ray does. Colin Ray, not the best pitcher, really. He's kind of a junk pitcher, I would kind of classify him as. He has worse numbers against Arizona than Gallen does against Milwaukee. So I think Arizona, like motivation-wise, starting pitching matchup-wise, I would lean in their direction, but 66% of the tickets, only 63% of the cash, and they've dropped from -120 to -118, coming off that big win last night, so I don't know. I mean, it's not something I'm actually going to play. And Philadelphia Mets, that's a big game too, just Mets also in the wild card hunt, fighting for the wild card. They flipped from +102 to -106, but 70% of the tickets on the Mets, the public liking the Mets in this series, man, even though Philadelphia still has the better record, but the public likes the Mets. I don't know, man. I mean, the Mets, they're a somewhat bigger market team, even though both of these teams have good history in Major League Baseball. I don't know. I don't quite get it, but 60% of the cash on the other side on Philadelphia. Christopher Sanchez versus David Peterson. Sanchez may be the better of these 2 starting pitchers. somewhat, but both of these pitchers actually match up well against these opposing offenses. If you look at their history against the opposing hitters, they actually both have pretty decent numbers against these opposing hitters. So I don't know that there's that much of an edge one way or the other in the starting pitching matchup. So I will leave it at being interesting. Atlanta, I mean, they need to beat Miami. Atlanta is behind in the wild card race. They're still in the race, but they are behind those other 3 or 4 teams that I've been mentioning. So they definitely need to win, but they're laying a giant minus 200 money line price on the road, and they're crazy public, of course, because they're playing Miami. They're up against Valente Bayozo, a decent rookie pitcher from Miami, but Atlanta has seen him before now. So even though he did pretty decently in that first start against Atlanta, Atlanta now knows what he throws. We're going to get a little poetic there with those rhymes. So I think Atlanta should be a little bit more capable of hitting him this time around than the previous time when they didn't know what he was going to throw at them. But do I want to lay minus 200 on the road with Charlie Morton on the mound? No, I really don't. Even though he's a very old man, I think his numbers against Miami's hitters are actually not terrible. I mean, nobody really does that badly against Miami. Miami sucks offensively. And then Dodgers, Colorado, I mean, there aren't really implications here. Dodgers, they're going to win their division, most likely. But the Dodgers, congratulations to Shohei Ohtani, who I believe went into yesterday's game at 49-49, and he finished yesterday's game at 51-51. He's become the first player ever in Major League Baseball to have 50 steals and 50 home runs in a Major League Baseball season. He's the only member of the 50-50 club, starting the 50-50 club. Crazy. Congratulations to Ohtani. I mean, he's playing at a time where pitchers are throwing like harder than ever too, and offensive stats are down across the league. So it is kind of crazy that he's done that. And I think the fact that he's no longer pitching right now, because if you didn't know, Shohei Ohtani was like a Babe Ruth type of character. He was a starting pitcher and one of the best hitters in baseball simultaneously for the Angels. But I think he had an arm injury or something that's kept him from being a starting pitcher. I think it's keeping him out of the pitching role this year and maybe next year. You would love to see him pitch while he's also doing this, wouldn't you? But I think when he's pitching now, because the NL got rid of the pitchers having to hit, right? Although I guess maybe you're still allowed to have your pitcher hit. I'm not sure, because both leagues have the DH now, so I don't know. But that would be crazy if we saw him pitching and hitting at the same time, still doing all this. Maybe you could get him a 50-50-50. I don't know what pitcher stat would make sense for 50. I don't know. Obviously not wins. I don't know exactly what it would be, but who knows? Or maybe you could get him the 50-50-25 club or something and get 25 wins out of it. Although that's quite an ask in baseball now, with pitchers pitching less frequently. But are the Dodgers going to be in a bit of a letdown spot because they're coming off such a massive game where Shohei Ohtani in that game went 6 for 6 with 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, and 2 steals in that game, by the way, which is maybe the best single game offensive output in Major League history, too. I don't know if it quite is, but that is just madness. That's insane. Dodgers could be in for a letdown here because they don't really have that much to play for. They're highly likely to win their division. They're facing this bad Colorado Rockies team. They're coming back from the East Coast, having to travel cross country, which is not the greatest spot to be in. Colorado, I think, is just coming in from home, so they're starting a road trip. So Colorado's in the better situational spot for sure. Starting a road trip tends to focus you a lot more than returning home from a road trip, which tends to be a distracted spot because you have home life to deal with and whatever. We don't even know who LA's starting pitcher is, so it kind of makes this hard to handicap because we don't know who's going to come in and pitch in their rotation there. It could mean it's going to be one of their bad pitchers, like Bobby Miller or Walker Buehler or somebody. I don't know who's up in the rotation this time, but that could give Colorado a little bit of an edge because at least we know Kyle Freeland is pitching for them, and his stats aren't great, but he's one of the less bad pitchers in the rotation at the very least. He's not that horrendous, and he's been okay in a huge 209 sample size against the Dodgers, 263 average and 814 OPS. The OPS is high. He's allowed way too many home runs to them, really, 10 and 21 walks and 55 strikeouts. He does have control issues. He's not the greatest pitcher, but he hasn't been the worst against the Dodgers, and the Dodgers are in a bad situational spot. So if we see the Dodgers roll out some bad starting pitcher here, it is maybe a potentially a spot where you could fade the Dodgers, but they will be a huge favorite, I think, regardless. But if it's some crappy pitcher, you might see them come out at less than a minus 200 favorite. I don't know exactly. We'll see. It remains to be seen. And I think it's not going to be Tyler Glasnow, by the way, because Glasnow is like the best pitcher on LA's pitching staff, and he's been injured for a few weeks now, I think, and it seems like he's not coming back. It seems like the injury is worse than was originally thought. That is a blow to LA, man, as far as once they get into the playoffs. Having Glasnow in that rotation basically gives them like 3 really good starting pitchers in that rotation. With him gone, it makes their starting pitching a little bit more vulnerable at the very least. So that's not great for them. So that's my baseball rundown today. The picks of the day, I'm about to get to what I think is my best lean, which is in college football, but it's going to be the last game I talk about because it's the late game. You can probably guess what it is. I'm not playing it, but I am going to recommend maybe playing a side in that one. It is my favorite lean of the day, but I don't know if it's strong enough to actually play. Let's talk about college football. We have 3 FBS matchups here, so we're getting a nice college football slate, and one of them is a ranked versus ranked matchup in the 8 o'clock game there. So some interesting games tonight. Not a horrible college football slate, really, if you're a fan. Stanford and Syracuse is the earliest game, and this is an ACC matchup now. Stanford is in the ACC. We see Syracuse down from 9.5 to 8.5 with juice. Down from 9.5 with juice. So we do see some market movement playing on the Stanford side, knocking that line down a bit. 53% of the tickets are on Syracuse, but only 51% of the cash. So Syracuse is slightly public. I mean, Syracuse has been the better of these 2 teams in recent years, so I can kind of understand why. They were a bowl team last year, but both of these teams have had some turnover. This is interesting, man. Stanford, I think this is their ACC opener, and they have to do it on the road, and it's an unfamiliar place to play, man. They have to go to Syracuse and play in the Carrier Dome on a Friday night. I mean, they should be pumped up for it because it's a Friday night football game, but both teams are going to be pumped up for it for the Friday night lights, even though it's college and not high school. But it's an unfamiliar venue for Stanford, man, so they're not used to playing at Syracuse, so it could be a little bit more difficult. These teams that are in these new conferences, they tend to have a bigger home advantage because those teams in that conference aren't used to going to their place, but they're not used to going to the place of all these teams that are already in the conference. Plus, the team that's already in the conference, Syracuse, they don't want this newcomer coming in and beating them on their home turf. So that tends to motivate them a little bit more, too. Like, they want to hold serve at home and defend their home turf more because it's like, who's this new guy? Screw them. We can't allow them to beat us at home. So Syracuse should maybe have a little bit of a motivational edge, but situationally, aside from that, I don't know that Syracuse is in the best spot. I mean, I don't know if they're that good. I mean, these 2 results that they have are not that impressive, to be honest. They're coming off a win over Georgia Tech, who was ranked when they beat Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech was only ranked. It was similar to what I said about BC last week. BC is not a horrible team, but Georgia Tech was only ranked because they beat Florida State. And Florida State, we're seeing they might actually be pretty bad. Like, Florida State was not a top 25 team. I think it's pretty clear now. They were not deserving of anywhere near what their opening ranking was to start the season. So that Georgia Tech win over Florida State is looking worse and worse as the season progresses. The fact that they were ranked and Syracuse beat them, that does not make the Syracuse win look any better, really. I think this is more of just like a kind of typical ACC matchup that we see between these 2 teams. It's a decent win, so it's actually not Syracuse's conference opener, so my mistake. Is it Stanford's? I don't know. So Syracuse already played Georgia Tech and won that game, and then they actually had a bye last week. So Stanford, it is going to be their home open, or their ACC conference opener. Excuse me. Both teams had byes last week, so both teams are coming into this game off of byes. Syracuse is coming in off a bigger win at the very least because they're off of winning their ACC home opener. So I think that extra time off actually hurts Syracuse a little bit more because when you have that momentum and you're coming off a big win like that, the last thing you want to do is have to go into a bye because what do you change if things are going well for you? There's nothing that you can change going into the bye. The bye is much better for teams that go into it on a bad note because they can refocus and they can fix things. Whereas if you have nothing to fix, there's nothing that you can really do. So Syracuse is at a disadvantage as far as the bye scenario is concerned, in my opinion. And they're coming off a bigger win, of course, because as I just showed you, Stanford's coming off a win over Cal Poly, who's an FCS team. It's not a big game whatsoever. So Stanford is almost coming off of 2 straight byes. But is that really too much time off? Not really, because at least they use that Cal Poly game as kind of like a tune-up maybe type of thing. So Stanford probably used that bye to more of their advantage than Syracuse did. But like I said, this is an unfamiliar spot for Syracuse to be in, or for Stanford, to be in, and Syracuse is going to still be motivated to defend their home turf. So I think that there are kind of some conflicting situational aspects to this game where it makes it a fairly difficult handicap. Illinois, Nebraska is the what's up, Dickie? Thanks for hanging out, guys. Zach, what's going on, guys? Blernsball, yeah, I'm entering the Futurama universe, and I will talk about Blernsball. I will talk about Tennessee. I will talk about in my Saturday breakdown video. I think that matchup is interesting, man. I don't know that I'm gonna wind up making a play on that game, but I find it to be interesting. Dickie, I don't know anything about the Spanish Liga, man. I don't follow the soccer or the football. I occasionally throw down like a play once in a while in like a World Cup scenario where I think there's value, but other than that, I really don't follow it or do it. Illinois and Nebraska is the big game on the slate. That's the big ranked matchup, but do these teams really deserve to be ranked where they are? That's questionable. Illinois is at 24, Nebraska's at 22. Illinois, I think, is less deserving of the ranking than Nebraska is, and you can see here Nebraska's a big favorite, although the market looks like it's indicating against Nebraska strongly. So it's, again, this is kind of a hard read because looking at their scheduling, it looks like Illinois is kind of an overrated team right now. I mean, they beat Kansas. That was their one big win. It was at home. It was against a pretty overrated, in my opinion, Kansas team. I don't know that Kansas should have been ranked 19 going into that game. And because Illinois won that game, they're now ranked. I think Illinois is probably not a top 25 team either. And that score was a little bit misleading, man, which I mentioned when I played Central Michigan last week against Illinois, which that one wound up pushing as a 21-point loss for Central Michigan there. So 30-9, that was a close call. They're glad I got out of there with a push. But look at Illinois, man. They did not play well in that game against Kansas. They got outgained. They only put up 271 yards of offense. The reason they won was because they had a 4-1 turnover edge. So Illinois, they've been outplaying their opponents, or they haven't been outplaying their opponents as much as it looks like they have been. They've not been playing as well as they appear to have been playing. So Illinois has had, I think they're +6 this year in the turnover margin so far. So Illinois has been playing much. They've been getting, Illinois has been has had the benefit of a lot of turnovers from their opponents this season, whereas Nebraska, that has not been the case. Nebraska, although Nebraska really hasn't played anybody, Nebraska has not been thriving as much off of the turnovers. So Illinois, I think their record is a little bit misleading, or what we've seen on the scoreboard is a little bit misleading because they're +6 in turnover margin. I think Nebraska is only like +1 or maybe even -1. I don't know what they are. You'd have to look, but they don't have a huge turnover edge one way or the other. Nebraska hasn't really done anything. I mean, they've beaten a low-tier UTEP FBS team. They beat Colorado, who is one of the most overhyped teams in college football. I mean, they're really not great. And then they beat an FCS team in their most recent game, Northern Iowa. So not much to take away from all that. Both teams are coming off games that don't really mean that much. Illinois just beat Central Michigan, so both teams are coming off kind of just an easy win, a tune-up type of game. So the situation doesn't really put me on one side or the other necessarily, although, like I said, I think Illinois, because of the turnover discrepancy, I think Illinois is not as good as people think they are. Nebraska, I think, is actually the more legitimate of the two teams, which, of course, is why they're favored. And this is the conference opener for both teams, I believe. This is the Big Ten opener, and it's under the Friday night lights, so it's going to be a big game. Both teams are going to have reason to show up for this, but because of that turnover differential, I don't really understand the market indicators in this one. Nebraska's down from 9 to 7.5. Significant market movement coming in on the Illinois side. 53% of the tickets on Nebraska and 66% of the cash on Illinois. I don't really understand it because I think Illinois is the more overrated of these two teams, but this might be more of the math guys coming in and just playing the number, even though what I said kind of would be like a math guy interpretation where Illinois is getting the benefit of all those turnovers, so Illinois is not as good as they look, really. based on their statistics. So it seems like the math guys would not be that much on the Illinois side here. So I don't understand it. I don't really see much of a situational angle here, but there's no way that I can play Nebraska in this one based on what I see in the market. The market actually is so strongly indicating on Illinois, it almost makes me want to lean to that side a little bit, and I just don't really know why. I might have to listen to some more of the professionals, but I've listened to a few professionals on this game, and I've heard them being split on the side in this game. Some like Illinois and some like Nebraska. So this one is a difficult read as well. The game that I actually like the side on is San Jose State against Washington State in this kind of ugly 10 p.m. matchup. Washington State, I like the San Jose State side here, but you've lost some value on this as Washington State's dropped from 14 to 12, both with a little bit of juice on them on the Washington State side a little bit there, but I don't know if it was ever 14 in any of the books that I saw. I saw 13.5 mostly out there, so you can get 12.5 right now in San Jose State if you like the side. I don't mind playing San Jose State plus the 12.5. I do kind of like it. I mean, obviously I lean that way. This is my favorite lean of the day, at least even though I'm not playing it at the moment. Washington State is public slightly, 54% of the tickets on them, 53% of the cash on the other side on San Jose State. I think San Jose State's being undervalued in this game, in my opinion. The market does look like it's indicating on San Jose State, moving the line in their direction. More of the cash is on San Jose State, and it seems dangerous to do it because you're talking about a team that's been known for being in one of the bigger conferences, the Pac-12, Washington State, and Washington State has looked like the better team offensively, but they have been horrendous defensively. I think they've given up more than 400 yards in every one of these games so far, including to Portland State, an FCS team. So Washington State has not been able to slow any of these offenses down. Yeah, even though Washington State has been putting up some pretty hefty offensive numbers, they've given up huge offensive numbers to every one of their opponents. So their defense is not good, and that's not really what you want when you're laying points. Although, yes, you want to go to offense when you're laying points, but their defense has really been struggling. And against Texas Tech, I talked about this game, man. I lost a bet on this game on Texas Tech. Washington State got outgained by Texas Tech in that game, and they had the benefit of a 4-1 turnover margin in that game. So that result was misleading. Washington State, based on the stats, they probably shouldn't have even won that game at all. They got outgained, and they had a huge benefit in the turnover margin that helped them out. And now they're coming off a huge rivalry game in the Apple Cup where they beat Washington. That's a huge win, man. I mean, Washington is their main rival, but also the team that made the college football championship last year. Washington State wanted that game, man. And they showed up and they won the game, but it was close. They had to make a defensive stand at the end there where Washington was on the verge of potentially getting a touchdown to potentially win the game towards the end there. And could not do it. Washington State held on defense at the end there. But this game, statistically, Washington also completely outgained them in this game. The turnover margin wasn't significant in this game, but Washington outplayed them, outgained them, and Washington State still somehow won the game. So these results are misleading, and Washington State's off of a giant win there. So I think Washington State is in a bad situational spot. That's a letdown spot, but it is Friday night, so they should still kind of get up for it, but I think San Jose State is going to be the team that's going to get up more for it because they're a lower conference team. They are less used to playing games like this. Washington State, I think, has already played. They've played in primetime games like this before to some extent. San Jose State does not usually get the primetime. This is on the CW. Does not usually get the primetime billing there. So I think San Jose State might be a little bit more pumped for it. And Washington State has a bigger game up next against Boise, who looks like they're a pretty good program right now. They look pretty good this year. That's a much bigger game than this, too, against the San Jose State team, even though they're actually undefeated. They haven't played anybody yet, really. They've beaten 2 FCS teams. So that's my problem with playing San Jose State here is I don't know how much you can really gauge about them from these games. And they played an Air Force team that looks down this year. Air Force has really been struggling on offense because it looks good. Like, hey, San Jose State held Air Force to 7 points. This is an Air Force team that throws the triple option at you. They usually run all over the place. San Jose State held them to like 100-something yards of offense, but Air Force didn't do well against Baylor either. So this Air Force offense looks like it's a little bit down this year. So that's my issue with it. I don't know how much you can take away from this, but San Jose State, This is like one of their biggest games of the year, man. They get to play a former Pac-12 team, basically a Pac-2 team under the Friday night lights. It's a big game for San Jose State, and they have been the better defensive team out of the two, although their opponents have been so weak. I don't know that you can really take that much away from it, but Washington State has allowed like 400-something yards of offense on average to their opponents. San Jose State has only allowed like 100-something yards of offense to their opponents, but again, it's been significantly weaker opponents. But is that such a ridiculous margin that we can actually say San Jose State might actually be the better defensive team out of the two? I think you might be able to maybe say that, because I think Washington State's defense is really bad. And then the other issue we have here is that San Jose State and Washington State, they both are coming into this season with new offenses. They both are without their quarterback that they had last year. San Jose State went to a bowl last year, and Washington State had Cam Ward last year. I don't remember if they were in a bowl or not, but Cam Ward was really good, and he's now on Miami. So both of these teams have new quarterbacks this year, kind of having to get a new rhythm offensively. So I think that's kind of a wash either way. So this would be a situational play, though, because I think Washington State is coming off such a monster win in that big rivalry game over Washington as an underdog, and they have a big game against Boise up next week on Saturday. They could overlook San Jose State, man, a lesser opponent than the two teams they're facing, whereas San Jose State's playing against probably the biggest name that they'll be facing all year. So my strongest lean on the board there is San Jose State in college football plus the points. No official plays for me tonight. I apologize about that, but hopefully you get something out of the all of the breakdowns that I just gave you there. A nice long video this morning again, man. Thanks for hanging out, guys. That's gonna do it from me. Have a good night, everybody. Peace out. Yeah, Washington State is awful. They're not good. San Jose State's not a great team. I mean, they're the worst team here, but it would be a situational play, and you'd be taking a whole lot of points there. Follow the Tower Game podcast, man. We're on every Wednesday night. You can find us on most of the places and support us on Patreon, patreon.com/TowerGang. We're the most offensive podcast on the planet, man. Peace out. Have a good Friday. Kick off the weekend right, baby. If you play any of these bets, win them. Peace.